Sports Talk BS Sports. My Sean Taylor. William Coleman is out defending the world against aliens, and hopefully he wins. But I will be starring in a new movie by Robert Townsend called Meteor Man, the remake, and I will be Meteor Man. So that's going to be awesome. I guess we'll start with the best news ever. Duke won last night. That's right, we won. And now we face Michigan State and hopefully another win on Sunday. And we're playing in the great state of South Carolina, which makes it even better for Coach K last ride. It wasn't a great game. Duke won pretty good, but it was a game that makes me realize that this team is so unorganized. It's the worst team ever. And when I say that, I'm not saying as talent-wise. I'm actually saying as a collective. They're not together. Of course, we could go back to 96 and say that probably was one of the worst teams because they fell apart when Coach K went down. However, they had heart and they played hard. This team just doesn't have a cohesiveness that you're used to seeing with a Coach K team, which could mean that this is why he's saying this is the end, because now it's like I don't have the heart to coach them. However, I hope this team rallies behind this win and, hey, we hand Michigan State another L and then we just keep moving forward. But the best part about this year is you always hear the phrase, down goes Frazier. And guess what? Kentucky went down. Woo! But who thought Kentucky was that good? Nobody, really. But what we're seeing in college basketball, which is probably a good thing, is the fact that you have so many one and dones with the big schools that the playing field is actually level with talent. And I don't think people really understand that because your one and dones are your 5 stars, 4 stars. You know, they're the ones, the cream of the crop. Well, if they're only in your program for 1 year, then your program really is not building. You're just adding. Look at the Lakers. We'll get to that later. But when you have a program like Davidson, who's got players that's been there for almost 4 years, when they start playing in the tournament, they're not looking at you as, oh, my God, your chest. Because last night when I watched the Duke game, Cal was almost, well, there was some scrappy bunch. Well, they were stealing the ball. Once the ball they were stealing it. They were hustling Duke and everything. Even though Duke average height was 6'10", they were being really handled in that game. But that's because when you look at Duke team, they don't have a lot of depth as far as experience in their starting 5 because most of them are one and dones. So when you look at teams that are that you call smaller, they're actually bigger in the tournament now, especially when you look at the whole encompass of the tournament. So you're going to see a lot more teams going down. Sorry, except for Duke, we're going to win it because we have to give Coach K his ring. Before we go into the NBA, let's take a stop and talk about Deshaun Watson. First off, I don't know what he did, and that's not for me to speculate, so we'll leave it at that. But if the reports are true, he's going to be a Cleveland Brown. And they're going to fully guarantee his money, which is looking at $230 million. 5 years. First off, congratulations to Deshaun Watson, if that's the truth. I have no qualms with you getting your money. Congratulations. Even better if the Browns can keep the team intact because despite Jarvis Landry leaving, which, by the way, I still thought that was a dumb move for them to cut him. But you got Amari Cooper. You still got $2 at the running back. You still got a great tight end. And your offensive line is pretty decent. And your defense, they're still good. So now you're looking at the Browns like, were they a quarterback away? And if so, is that quarterback Deshaun Watson? I think so. So now you take Deshaun Watson, who was putting up arcade numbers in Houston, which was a bad team, to now putting up arcade numbers in Cleveland. However, it's still Cleveland, so we'll see how that pans out. Deshaun, I mean, you played in South Carolina at Clemson. You played in Houston. Are you ready for that cold weather off them lakes in Cleveland? It's a different ball game. But I believe you can, because you still do a little running, and plus you got two backs that Hunt, Chubb. I mean, they still exist. So that was actually a great move by the Cleveland Browns. I know Johnny Manziel, my fault. Baker Mayfield, they both act like each other, you might as well say. But Baker Mayfield's in his feelings, and I understand why he's in his feelings. However, you was the number one pick. There's an expectation that comes with being the number one pick. And you wasn't the underdog because you was the number one pick. You got 4 coaches fired. Everybody was patient with you. You know, they said he played hurt last year. Great. Understand. And from my understanding with football, everybody's hurt until you retire. So was that an excuse? I know Skip Bayless like to give those excuses, but the truth of the matter is the numbers say he was an average quarterback. There's nothing wrong with being an average quarterback. But does that translate into wins? You know why I'm so offended with a lot of statements that Baker Mayfield makes? They're the same people in my mind. I just don't see no difference with them. They both were drafted by Cleveland. They both act like they had something to prove, and they both proved nothing. Is that people jump on Jimmy G, but at least Jimmy G been to the Super Bowl. Jimmy G been to the conference finals. Jimmy G been to the playoffs. When Jimmy G is healthy, he is actually a winning quarterback. Let that sink in for y'all that sit up here and be like, oh, you know, Jimmy G, sorry. He's better than Baker Mayfield. Let that sink in. But this is not about neither one of them. This is about Deshaun Watson. And the fact of the matter is, I think it's a good deal for Cleveland. They would have been crazy not to. If you have a quarterback right now that's not going to stay in Houston, he's still 25 years old. He didn't play a year, so he's probably healthier than ever now. He's healed. And plus, he has something that he wants to prove. And you know the talent did not diminish. The off-the-field issues, they're not gone, but the criminal aspect of it is. And hopefully moving forward, he made better decisions. I'm not here to speculate. Just hope he made better decisions about who he has around him, why he has these people around him. So, it's time for us to have that topic of discussion. I'm going to have a brief discussion of it because I want my partner to be here so when I embarrass him, he feels good. So how do we define greatness in the NBA? How? Everybody says, well, it has to be Michael Jordan. I said, okay. Explain. He's 6'6". That's not explaining anything. When the game was on the line, he took the last shot. That's not explaining. He made his teammates better. Well, if we look at the documentary, he was a bully. Well, you know, he's Michael Jordan. You know what I mean? I was like, well, I think it's more so of the cultural impact with Michael Jordan than it is actual the gameplay. So I said, how do we define greatness? And I heard yesterday someone said with LeBron James, they said, well, you can't use stats. And I was like, well, isn't that how you define greatness? Is by stats? So they was like, no, because it was always about championships. I was like, well, I'm like, you can't use championships because a lot of great players don't make it to the finals. A lot of great players don't even make it to the to the playoffs. So I said, why are we removing stats? So I said, well, let's really look at this. So how do we define greatness? Do we define it by points? Let's look at that. Top 3 scorers in NBA history: Kareem, Malone, LeBron. Top 3 rebounders: Wilt, Bill Russell, Kareem. Top 3 in assists: Stockton, Kidd, Paul. Let's just look at that for a moment. Scoring is one aspect of the game. And right now, sitting at top of that is Kareem. Malone is number 2. People forget about Karl Malone. Karl Malone was a monster. He really was. He was the definition of a power forward. Like, he was really a power forward. Like, Dominique was a hybrid. Kevin Garnett really wasn't a power forward. Tim Duncan was more of a center, but, you know, he did have the power forward. No, Karl Malone was a power forward. He was power. And he's number 2 all time. Now, granted, LeBron James is going to probably pass him by the end of the year because his numbers are very close to him. But even in scoring, Michael Jordan is not in the top 3. And Kobe's number 4. Rebounds. Now, rebounding wasn't part of his game. Well, wasn't rebounding part of the game? So how are we defining greatness now when I look at rebounding? Wilt, Bill Russell, Kareem. Think about what I just said. Wilt, Bill Russell, Kareem. What so far the names I have mentioned are all part of the 75 team as far as the 75 greatest players. One person already is in 2 categories in the top 3, and that's Kareem. Think about that for a moment. Kareem is already in 2 categories with 3. It's just amazing. Kareem is there. So that lets you know right then and there, Kareem not only scored, but he rebounded. Now, assist is more of a guard-led situation, but Stockton, Kidd, Paul. Well, Karl Malone's number 2 all-time scoring. Stockton's number 1 in assists. They were teammates. Who got those assists? That pick and roll was deadly. You couldn't stop that pick and roll. I don't even know how it exists. I don't even know why people don't use it anymore. It's like the skyhook. Why people ain't using the skyhook anymore? Like these offensive weapons were unstoppable, which led to one being number 1, Kareem, one being number 2, Malone. And Malone running partner being number 1 in assists. Now, why am I bringing all of this up? Because now we're going to talk about actual rings. Since people like to bring up rings, Michael Jordan, he's 6 for 6. Okay, fair. Who got the most rings? Bill Russell. After Bill Russell, Sam Jones. After Sam Jones, John Havlicek, K.C. Jones, and a guy named Tom. I didn't write down his last name. So Bill Russell has 11 championships. Sam Jones has 10. Tom, John, and KC all have 8. They lead in rings. Now, you're like, oh, no, it can't be like that. I'm about to tell y'all a secret. All of them were Celtics. They all were on the same team at one point in time for at least 8 years. With the anchor being Bill Russell. These were his teammates. The Boston Celtics, as a team, garnished the same amount of championships as the Lakers with 17. Player-wise, Bill Russell has 11. Sam Jones has 10. Havlicek and KC and Tom have 8. All Boston Celtics. What are you getting at? How do we define greatness? Michael Jordan can't be the greatest player of all time. He don't have the most rings. He's not number 1 in points. He's not number 1 in rebounds, and he's not number 1 in assists. But you can't use stats. Well, then what are we playing the game for? Because it's in championship stats. He don't have all the rings. He has 6. Which means he's in the middle of the pack. Now, this is why I bring this to everybody's attention. If you wasn't drafted by an organization that know how to put a team together, chances are you're not winning a championship. The Lakers and the Celtics combined for 34 championships out of 75 years. Let that sink in. That means that any given time they were going to win a championship in at least each decade. Oh, and I know what y'all about to say. Well, back then, there was only like 10 teams. You can't help the competition you play. That's the problem I have with people. You can't help the competition you play. I can't, if I'm on a team and we're playing the Powder Puff Girls and we beat them, you can't say I didn't win that championship because it's the Powder Puff Girls. I can't help who I play, but I have to play. Bill Russell can't help it that the league was still growing during that time frame, but what he did do was anchor championship teams. So why wouldn't he be the greatest? Kareem can't help it that there was a point in time where he was probably the most dominant big man and he won 6 championships and he's all-time leading scorer. You can't. Well, the NBA was different back then. Well, he played within the rules that he had. In other words, stop moving the goalposts. Michael Jordan is not the greatest. And we're going to get in depth with a lot of this with the 75 team because there's a lot of discrepancies with the 75 team because there's a lot of people who was left off that should be on there. Championships should not be a criteria to be considered the greatest of all time because championships are a luck. I'm not going to lie to you. It's luck. LaMelo Ball may never win a championship in Charlotte. But does that mean he's not going to be a great player? No. He may go down as arguably the greatest point guard. Unfortunately, he may not win a championship. Organizations do win championship. Krause was right. And no matter how much you don't like him, Krause was right. When he drafted that Bulls team, when he put that Bulls team together, it was remarkable. And a lot of people don't realize that. Michael Jordan was a solo act before he masked that talent. He brought talent there for Jordan to win. He told a Ron Harper, which by the way was a 20-point scorer, to come to his team just to play defense. Dennis Rodman come. Tony Kukoc, who was dominating overseas, come over team just to be the 6th man. So yes, Michael Jordan has greatness and he was great and he's done great things. However, if we really put it in amongst everything, he's in the middle of the pack and there's nothing wrong with that. But that's why I said we can't use championships. Dominique never won a championship. Does that mean he wasn't a great? No. Karl Malone and John Stockton didn't, but arguably their numbers dictate that they were still powerful. That's Jason Kidd, I think, only got 1 championship. But numbers state that he was a very impactful person. Chris Paul right now doesn't have any championships, but his numbers suggest that he is still impactful. We cannot continue to use championships as a criteria of greatness. It's not, and it can't, and it shouldn't be. Greatness is the player. Championships are just part of the game. In totality, it's a team effort. So you have to have everything in peace. Right now, Guinness may never win another championship. Realistically, this is why I bring it up. We talk about LeBron. Oh, he went to 10 finals and only won 4 championships. How many finals Charles Barkley been to? Hakeem. I could go down the list of great players on the 75 team that they wasn't on a team that started with the Celtics and ended with the Lakers. Chances are they didn't make the finals or they only have 1 championship. How many championships does Dr. J have? Not ABA, NBA. Moses Malone. Mo Cheeks. If the Lakers won 5 championships in the 80s, the Celtics won 3 championships in the 80s, that's a 10-year span, right? Who won the other 2? Philly and the Pistons. Isaiah only has 2 rings. And he's arguably considered one of the greatest point guard pound for pound. That's my point. It's a team effort. You had to be drafted by the right organization who had the right influences to persuade people. And it's going to get harder now because of free agency and the way players can move now and force their way out, that chances are you may not see a dynasty like that anymore. That's why when you look at the Warriors, you have to give the Warriors props because their core is drafted. They added pieces here and there, but their core was drafted. And they got 3 rings. So let's put a pin in that when we have William Coleman here so we can argue with facts and not our feelings. And that's directed towards him. So I want us to talk about the WNBA. I remember the WNBA when it first started. I think it was the summer 90. Was it the summer 96? I think it was. Oh man, back then it was Cheryl Swoops, Rebecca Lobo, Lisa Leslie, Dawn Staley. She had them handles, boy. I used to love me some Dawn. I always say I was gonna marry Dawn Staley. I was like, I'm gonna marry her, and she's right up the road too. Hi, Dawn. It's my shine. I remember when they started. It was beautiful. Cheryl Swoops was the first, I think if I'm not mistaken, she was the first female to actually have a shoe by Nike. The problem that the WNBA has is the fact that women don't support it. Everybody's upset that Brittany Griner had to go to Russia to make money because she can't make money in the WNBA. No matter how many times Kobe Bryant, LeBron James go to those games are not sold out. No matter how many times Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, and any other NBA players talked about the WNBA, those games weren't sold out. Who's walking around with a WNBA jersey right now? Who's walking around with a WNBA player's shoe on right now? Not even the females that play basketball are. The point I'm making is this. You can't say you want more money when you're not bringing in money. When you could barely pay your players, which we have seen. I get it. Trust me. I love the WNBA. I actually do watch it. But the Big Three gets more people in the stands than the WNBA. And that's a fact. College basketball gets more people in the stands. The point is this. You cannot sit up here and say we deserve equal pay when you're not putting an equal product on the floor. I don't know what you have to do. And honestly, I can't. Because like I said, I remember when the WNBA started. I watched it. The first season. Houston was the first team to win 5 championships. But they weren't led by Cheryl Swoops because she had got pregnant. Cynthia Cooper was the juggernaut. People don't even realize that. And she actually ended up being the coach of UNCW at one point. College in my hometown. I can name WNBA players. Like, I'm a fan of Candace Parker. I actually liked her, and her winning the championship was cool. But you know what happened when they won the championship? Nobody showed up. You can't ask for equal pay when you don't get equal attention, when you don't bring in equal revenue. It's the same argument that female teams have at these big universities. We deserve this. You don't, because the only way you survive is off of football and basketball men's. It's only rare. Connecticut and right now South Carolina and Tennessee are probably the only schools that whose female basketball program is so dominant that it actually overshadows the men's. But that's rare, and South Carolina just came on board. I don't know what to do or how to fix it. I don't think nobody does, because it's not a product issue. It's a support issue. Men watch basketball. Maybe it's time for women who claim they want equal rights, equal independence. You want all this stuff. Now it's time for you to put it on the floor. Not the players, but maybe the fans. Maybe more female fans need to come to the stands. Maybe more females need to support them. Men be at those games. They take their daughters. You see a lot of men in those stadiums with their daughters. Maybe it's time for the women to step up and start supporting them. Honestly, I'm surprised they made it this long. And the way it's looking, they may not make it any longer. I hate to say that. I don't like seeing them going overseas to play basketball to make money. You know, the Brittany Griner situation is unfortunate. I mean, she shouldn't have, quote unquote, had drugs, but it's unfortunate. But in America, just like with soccer, it's not a popular sport. And you can't ask for equal anything. You cannot say a female in the WNBA deserves to make the same amount of money as LeBron James. You can't. You can't. That's not being sexist. That's being realistic, because not a female in the WNBA is bringing in that revenue off the field. You get more people at them games if LeBron James showed up than you do if he's not there. That shows you his impact on and off the court. What I'm saying is that the WNBA doesn't have a player that can bring people into them stands like that. So you can't ask for equal pay. You can't ask to be making $5 million when you can't even pack the stadium. If you really looked at a WNBA game on TV, they barely show past a certain row. That's not me being funny. That's me being real. They're never sold out. That shows you that their sport is not being cherished and loved by society. That's a society issue. Once again, I watch the WNBA. I watch women's sports. I remember when the WNBA started. I remember the women's Olympic team. I remember how dominant Lisa Leslie was. I remember a female by the name of Charlotte Smith, who used to play for University of North Carolina, dunking the ball in a game. See, I like basketball. But I can't be the only one that just likes basketball. So maybe they need to come up with a new marketing campaign. Maybe they need to come up with something else. But you cannot sit up here and say you deserve something when you have not put forth the effort to get it. You can't say you deserve something when you have not put a product on the floor that even resembles college. More fans are in college stands for women games than they are in the pros. I want them to be sold out. I want them to have more people watching them than the big three. No disrespect to Ice Cube. The big three is dope. But the WNBA is doper. But how do we get to that point? We have to respect it, cherish it, and work with it. Thank y'all for tuning in. Next time, hopefully William Coleman be here, and we'll go in depth on the 75 team. Also, the way the NFL is looking, next year is going to be fantastic. We're going to break it all down on how this quarterback is going to impact this team. And is Mitch Trubisky really that guy? Baseball season is starting up. So we have a lot of things that we're going to talk about. We have a lot of things we're going to go in depth. And I promise you will enjoy the show. We'll give a special thanks to 2exposure.com, Daryl and Ray, to all the other shows. Got the second show coming up after this. Please stay tuned. We love you. Be blessed and have a beautiful, beautiful day. We're out.